Entonces, ¿quiénes no están? ¿Es el Alexander? Y luego... sí, ya. Vale. Okay. So let's begin this evening session. As Marilu Bauchon Corrales, neither Marilu nor Nuhae Mohamed are here, we will jump these two talks to the short workshop on wildland firelines and climate change. And so, well, I leave my word to Jaime Senabre from SNIF, and he will begin to talk in this workshop. Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming of this workshop on forest fire and climate changes. Again, I want to thank the organizers for having considered interesting the inclusion of forest fire in this event. Then I will present a communication on the social risk perception and behavior before possible disaster. I hope you enjoy. Possibly, no organization or community has been fully prepared to face all the implications of a disaster. This statement is perhaps one of the most important challenges of the society. And although of itself can be a way to justify the vulnerability of human beings, rather it should be taken into account as a motivational aspect to raise prevention and safety as a subject first order. Today, we know that the responses of people in situations of disaster are not disorganized, nor have profound behavioral disorders, but rather continue to be social beings, even in the most difficult conditions for survival. This aspect has allowed us to understand that people passing by disaster are normal people reacting in a manner expected to unexpected or abnormal situation. A claim that has already become a classic in the world of psychology in emergencies. Also, over the years, it has been to demystify this false belief that panic is the typical behavior of population. It also noted the importance of pre-existing levels of social organization and the degree of preparation to predict the duration of the community response to disaster. Under the same approach, we have been developed studies leading to explain how people react to alarms and warnings of emergencies, how the rumor is presented, and how to handle the information in order to neutralize, guide, and reassure the public. So now we understand that victims of an emergency situation are not only suffering a physical injury of loss of any property, but on the contrary, we find that the concept of victim is broader and can reach extended to all a community. Overall, we can say that disasters are a time of life of the societies in which they occur or arise cohesion values, mutual assistance and solidarity, even when they could have been sleep before the tragedy. The disaster should consider framing an explanatory model and place the consequences of people. It has been thought patterns of crisis and stress are more appropriate, although they may offer a partial insight into such events. In that sense, the stress model has the merit of reviving interest in post-traumatic disorders, since an emergency situation is evaluated not only by their causes and physical effects, but their psychological impact on the human group he has suffered or is involved. Therefore, knowing how to manage the risks that those influences hold, in which the individual has little immediate microenvironment, personal control, is one of the tasks of the current psychology relative to a present and a future. Consider that a catastrophic event starts. Surprisingly, the continued existence and makes a fracture to the person who usually avoids having to consider his own death. It is therefore necessary to investigate how the human population reacts to such events in order to combine forces to design prevention programs and ever more effective approaches. An example of risk perception of natural phenomena. According to a study published by Alcina et al. 2014, the environmental uses of greatest concern to a survived population of the southeast Spain are, in the first place, desertification, second place, forest fire, drought, floods, extreme temperatures, earthquakes, erosion, strong winds, hurricanes, tsunamis, and others. On the other hand, the perceived threat by these natural phenomena is led by flooding, drought, forest fire, desertification. The 48 perceived the evolution of the impact caused by these natural phenomena worsen. One of the reasons that an individual and community and a society doesn't act preventively against the probability of a risk is due to the perception people have about the likelihood of that risk and the proximity of their consequences. It can also happen that while having a full awareness and perception of the probability of the risk, both individual and community and society doesn't have the necessary resources to prevent or minimize it. A perception and resource availability by be added a factor, the will. The same risk can have different interpretations and meanings and affect health, the environment, property, future generations, etc. From the psychosocial approach to risk, when to assess, interpret, and judge and risk, we have to take into account a number of quantitative, in example, index of probability and amount of losses, and qualitative factors, in example, involuntary nature of exposure, lack of personal control, and certainly about the likelihood of consequences of exposure, lack of credibility and trust in the institutions that manage. Also, the perception and the meaning that people can be attributed to the risk will be influenced by different types of beliefs, values, and social context. On many occasions, low priority is given to some of the dangers related to the environment, which leads many companies to live on a state of latent silent emergencies, which sometimes manifest themselves in a varying degrees of threat, occurrence, and intensity, reaching in some cases to acquire the status of disaster, catastrophe of calamity. Human behavior in disasters in the acronym sense of the incident passes through 3 stages: before, during, and after. Thus, the perception of risk has to be placed in the temporary time before. We may be at an apparent dissociation between social risk perception and human behavior to the manifestation of disaster. Thank you very much.
Tienen una pregunta para ti.
Wait a moment. I need
My apologies.
translator.
My
I need my
Espanol c'est terrible. Worse than your English, so sorry. Espanol c'est terrible. I can only say como te llamo. That's it. And gracias and pescadora paella. You know,
Te está hablando en castellano.
jambon. That's it.
Jamón,
You gave a whole
jamón, la
presentation,
paella.
so thank you. I can ask it later.
Do you have any question?
Sí.
¿Sí? Pero en español o en inglés.
Où est responsibility, communication, disaster? Les industries, les institutions, avec scientists, like, où est, is it, no, sorry, see, terrible. So whose responsibility is it to communicate, educate, inform about disasters? In your opinion, should it be government, should it be the scientific community, or should it be industry? Who the media companies? But okay. So we need to train them?
Preguntas de quién es la responsabilidad de los científicos, de los técnicos, de los políticos, de los ciudadanos.
What's your name?
Pero lo ha preguntado, pero no te lo ha preguntado a ti, lo ha preguntado a la sala en general. Sí.
And I think we need to empower people to be responsible for their lives. I think there's a lot of apathy right now in society, that people feel helpless, that they can't do anything about their lives. So they sit and they wait and they ignore the truth. don't you think? Human, yeah, he's human. Yeah. So education, yeah, is key. But I see a lot of apathy because I talk to a lot of people in different walks of life, from the taxi driver to the institutions, and I see a couple of things. No one's taking responsibility for educating what we see the high probability of happening. For instance, flooding, right? People should really move. In some cities should be really deserted right now, or consider an action plan, or invest in anti-flooding technology, you know, things like that. But I think there needs to be more dialogue, you know? And also there's something called social media. That's something that the institutions can't control. They can't control that. And social media plays a big early warning system, yeah? Social media, what's your perception on social media? You don't want people to panic and think it's end of the world, you know, it's apocalyptic, you know. I mean, there's hope. I think your message is that we've got some problems coming ahead, but we also have some solutions, and there's hope. But you need to take responsibility for the information that you get, and you make decisions based on that information. But there is hope. You guys represent hope. Your innovations represent hope, but your information also represents what you see in the future coming.
Every year, but also in California, also in Australia, Mediterranean basin, all over the Mediterranean basin, we have fires because the urban wetland interface is growing. So the interaction with forests is growing up with of man management is growing up every year. So. Despite we have to teach and to spread the conscience all over our students. We are going to have fires every year. So our problem is to stop the fires, not to have great fires, very destructive fires, as much as we can. That's our problem. We are going to have more and more fires every year. So you can see every year in California, in Australia, and in the Mediterranean basin, in South Africa.
So if we cannot take action on the basis of the problem, the information and the social responsibility of the people themselves, the common people, so we have to focus on where to solve the problem, so after the fire starts, how to put it off. I see. But it seems to me, that it is more not time-consuming, it's more money-consuming and porous-consuming if you are trying to solve the problem after it appears. Maybe it still needs more job to be done, so as this social action will take place to prevent the fire from setting. Maybe it's need more work or something. This is my thoughts, at least. I don't know.
With this kind
Okay, the climate says they are rising and rising. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, but the problem with fires is that you create more clouds and like more toxic gases, and that's going to create acid rain and all this. So it's cyclical, yeah. It's all interconnected. So the problem with fires is very bad because it creates bad rain. It comes back. What comes up comes down.
Yes, this is what Jaime says, no, that there is a kind of dissociation. People are like spectators, and they don't realize that they can have the fire in their own house, no? So it's a problem of dissociation, yeah.